we need to start by understanding what gender means. And gender means the roles and responsibilities that women and men have been given in the society. So gender-based violence is when a woman or a man, or a male or a female, have been targeted through violence as a result of them being a male or a female in the society. So you find that when a man, for instance, or a woman, for instance, does not meet their roles and responsibility, their partner or someone else in the society targets them with violence, verbal, which may be physical or verbal acts, just to bring them down and give them a lower sense of dignity in the society.
Yeah, and usually when you're talking about gender-based violence, it's all about power. We're talking about power imbalance in the community. And power imbalance can begin even at the smallest level of unit in the community, that is a family. So this is where one person or partner feels like they have power over the other. So you deny the other person the chance to act on their own self-will. So you dictate everything that they're supposed to do, say, or act. So in this case, power imbalance then brings forth the violences that we see in the community. Now, when you're talking about physical violence, so this is where you see somebody has been hit. There's physical fight and fist by one partner to the other. And when you're talking about gender, as my colleagues say, we are not only talking about a woman, because there's that perception that when we're talking about gender, it's only a woman who, the man is the perpetrator and the woman is the survivor or the victim. So when you're talking about physical, it happens both sides. It can be a man to a woman or a woman to a man. So that is one form of gender-based violence. Then we have another one, sexual violence. So this is where we have rape and defilement. Rape, usually it's above 18 years when a woman has been assaulted unwilling. She's unwilling to act or to respond to the other partner, so they are raped. And defilement happens below 18 years of age. So once you sleep with an underage, then it means that is defilement. So that's sexual act. It can be even sodomy, sodomy towards a man. Yeah. So those are two forms. Then we have other forms. My colleague can.
There is economic violence, and that's where a partner in a relationship controls their finances and does not allow the other partner to have freedom of expenditure and freedom of controlling their finances in their lives. And so you find that in this case, either the husband or the wife, in such a scenario, the husband may not allow the wife to be in control of certain finances. She won't have certain financial freedoms. And in the case where, for instance, the woman is the breadwinner, sometimes because men, it's a patriarchal society, you'd find that the man is still the one who's in control of the finances, even if the woman is the breadwinner in such a situation. There are also cultural acts such as FGM, other cultural acts like that are considered gender-based violence that are forced on people. So FGM, we're talking about wife inheritance, we're talking about bridal beating, we're talking about vaginal and window cleansing for women. So those are some of the acts. So those are some of the acts that are deemed to be sexual violences and cultural when it comes to gender-based violence. It is important to note and just to stress that people really interchange calling it rape of children when in fact it's defilement. And rape is only when there's forced sexual relations between two partners, regardless of whether you're a woman or a man under the Kenyan laws. So if there's no consent to have these sexual relations, that's when it's called rape. And consent is withdrawn at any point in that sexual activity. And so if someone says no, let it be no. There are certain acts that govern gender-based violence, and one of the major one is the Sexual Offences Act, that basically breaks down the definition of these offences and breaks down the sentences that are passed for some of these issues. So for instance, if a child under the age of 11 years is defiled, the person goes into prison for life imprisonment. From 12 to 15 they get 20 years, and from 16 to 18 years they get 15 years, not less than 15 years.
Yeah, so we also have Protection Against Domestic Violence Act that was enacted in May 2015. So this act basically, again, defines what is domestic violence in a family setup, and this can happen within, it can be to a man to a woman to a man, and the children can also be involved in this, in the domestic violence. So it talks about what is domestic violence, how can you signs to protect, signs to note the violence in the home, and what are the procedures once it has happened, what are the procedures, and how you can reintegrate the people back into the community. Yeah, so that is one. And then we have the Penal Code.
And the Penal Code is basically the legislation that governs criminal acts in the country, and it was what was governing most acts that were gender-based before the Sexual Offences Act came into place in 2006. And mainly cases of indecent assault are handled under the Penal Code, and unnatural acts, unnatural acts that are of a sexual nature are also handled under that Penal Code. The other act that may be read alongside this act is the Children's Act, in case of children who are in need of care and protection. There's the Victim Protection Act and the Witness Protection Act, which cater for the needs of witnesses and victims who may feel threatened by virtue of the fact that they witnessed or they were victims of a certain issue. And it's also of note that the law deems persons who have undergone these acts as victims, but the correct term to use is survivors, so that they can give some sort of dignity and to give some power back to these people who have been offended, and their bodily integrity and autonomy has been offended at some point.
Yeah. So when we're talking about these acts and what are the first steps that a survivor needs to do once it has happened to them? Well, the first step will be to go to the hospital, because it depends on the magnitude of the assault. You will need to collect evidence, and once at the hospital and you've gotten the medical care, the evidence has been collected, then you can report to the police. Yeah.
It is noteworthy that there is a 72-hour campaign where you're asked to go to a medical facility within 72 hours so that you can be given certain services that are important, such as a post-exposure prophylaxis, any medication that will prevent sexual transmitted infections, including emergency contraceptives. And through this, they will also take other forensic evidence that can be used as evidence in court. So you're also advised not to shower, you're advised not to place these certain items that were used during the offense in a plastic paper bag. In fact, you're advised to put them in, for instance, something that's like a khaki envelope. Do not put it in a newspaper, because the chemicals in the newspaper will tamper with the evidence. And take that now to the nearest police station. And when you get to the police station, you should look for, when you get to the reception desk, ask for an officer that has been trained on gender. Every police station in Kenya should have a designated gender desk manned by a male and a female, so that if in case you're a female, you can talk to a female officer, and in case you're a male survivor, you can talk to a male officer. And these people have been trained specially in what kind of evidence to take, how to draft the charge sheet, and ask the appropriate question that will prevent you from being victimized as you go along in getting the help. These officers should also accompany you to the hospital and give you a P3 form that you are not supposed to pay for. And this P3 form should be filled in the hospital by a medical officer alongside a PRC form, which is known as a post-rape care form, that has other medical evidence.
Yeah. So with all that, then we ask ourselves, because we talked about gender not being a female issue, we also do male involvement. We create awareness to our male counterparts. First, for them to come out when they when they are victims of GBV, and second, we train them as they are. People see them as the perpetrators. So what we'd like to do is create awareness that they are our keepers. We have a campaign on Be My Sister Keeper, to show that not all men are bad and not all women are good at the same time. So having male involvement into the campaign, they, one, will be our keepers. Two, they should come out in case they are victims of GBV and survivors of GBV. So we encourage the conversation in the community conversation, so that once this happens to you, you are able to access the right information